Okay, this is the teacher interview assignment for psychology education, and I'm here with.
Hi, I'm Brent Kittle. I'm a sixth grade teacher at Wilkins Elementary in Justice, Illinois. We're a 93% at-risk school, so we have 90% free and reduced lunch. We have a mixture of cultures here. We have Black, Asian, Hispanic, Muslim, and then Polish immigrants. So it's a very interesting dichotomy or trichotomy of cultures here. And we're talking today about disciplining students in the classroom.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kittle. Let's just dive right into this here. So, our first question to you is, what is your personal philosophy on classroom management?
I think it all comes down to expectations. You have to clearly state the expectation, you have to reinforce the expectation, and then if the expectation isn't met, there has to be a consequence valuable enough to the student so they understand that the expectation is required.
Okay. Has there ever been an incident where you felt you could have handled the situation differently or prevented it entirely?
Earlier in my career, I allowed emotion to get involved. And now I think that what you have to do is you look at it like a good policeman. You issue the ticket, you smile, you send them on the way with a nice day, and you realize that it's just an action and a reaction to it and not anything personal. Early in my career, I may have yelled or gotten emotional with a kid. I'm beyond that at this stage of the game. There's really nothing they can do to emotionally arouse me.
All right. What type of reinforcers have you used while teaching that you have seen to be successful in your years of teaching?
I think it has to be a combination of positive and negative reinforcement. If you only do positive reinforcement, that's all they look for. So if it's a candy bar or a cookie or a free pass or a homework pass or something like that, you never get the behavior you want without giving the reward. And then the kids don't work towards it, they work towards the reward. You want to somehow develop intrinsic devotion to education, not just getting a cookie. Really, at that point in time, they become nothing more than a dog and a treat. And even when you train your dog with treats, it doesn't work. So I use them sparingly, and I use them just on special occasions. We have consequences for negative actions, but again, if you talk about the expectation and talk about the result, I don't think it has to be looked at as a punishment. Very simply, the consequence of an action that occurs, much like a speeding ticket.
Okay. How would you describe your demeanor with your students?
I try to be as funny as possible, as engaging as possible, and to let them see my real personality. You'll hear a lot of teachers talk about, I don't smile until December or something like that. That's not effective. You have to let them know who you are. You have to let them know you're a person. And you just have to let them know that this is what you need and want from them. You tell them how you react to situations and what you expect them to do in the same situation.
All right, excellent. So what is a good approach for gaining parental cooperation in managing a disruptive student?
I think the first thing you have to do is contact all the parents early in the year, and not contact them the first time you contact them. Don't have it be a negative thing, because then you're just a problematic call. So you want to call them the first or second day, tell them that it was a pleasure to meet their child, that you're really looking forward to working with their child, and build a positive rapport right away. That way you don't have to worry about the negative. It's been my experience, and I've been here long enough to teach the parents and the children, is that the parents of problematic children generally were problematic students themselves. And because of that, they don't like school, they don't respect school, and they probably give a negative connotation about the school to their children because they themselves had bad experiences. So you almost have to win them over. So you call them and you tell them that, it was really wonderful today that Darius did a great job. I wanted to call and let you know. And if there's anything we can do together, and I always want to talk about working together with the parent. And then you'll get one of two things. You'll get people that constantly work with you, and then you'll get people that don't ever want to work with you. And, that's fine either way, because in the end, it's their child.
All right. When do you involve the administration in managing a disruptive student?
I use administration only to the sense that they're required to be involved in those decisions. And that'll depend on your school and what the individual administrator wants to do. Here at our school, they prefer that we handle most things ourselves, so we do. On a rare occasion that something happens with regard to legality, so if a student is physically harmed or bullied, where it needs to be documented, and it needs to be documented in such a fashion that perhaps a student is removed from the building or that there might be a legal issue involved, we always get administration involved. If it's just Billy being silly, you handle it yourself, or at least that's how we do it here.
Okay. How do you balance maintaining the interests of cooperative students while managing students with behavioral outbursts?
You know, that's probably the best and most difficult question there is. It's funny that whatever needs a child has, and they could be special needs or they could be emotional needs or social needs or behavioral needs, they have all the rights. And the poor, nice kid who comes to school every day and does their job and turns in their homework and is just the average kid has no rights at all. And that's just how the system is set up, and it's wrong. It's devastatingly wrong. And I feel bad. And as I get towards the end of my career and I look to publish some things, everything that I publish will be with regard to advocacy for the regular student, because no one advocates for them. But that being said, you know, we try to physically separate the problematic child or children from the kids that work hard, because we don't want to destroy the attitude of the kids that work hard. And that easily happens. What happens is they see that the bad kid doesn't, the so-called bad kid, doesn't get reprimanded strongly enough or enough in their own minds, so they start to act out, or they start to do less homework or whatever. So you have to separate them and then make individual variances of requirements for kids, especially if you have an ADHD kid or a kid with some kind of, drug-dependent parent, because they'll have synapse lapses and the inability to pay attention. But most of our ADHD that we see is probably the result of drug use during pregnancy by either the male or the female.
Okay. Under what conditions do you apply punishment to a student and to a whole class?
You should never punish the whole class, is what we're told. But in reality, there are times that children need to understand that they're a cohesive working group, a team. And so sometimes you need to be judged as a team. They can also affect the behaviors of the individual. So through peer pressure, if the entire class is punished on a rare occasion, if the entire class is punished on rare occasions, they can help you manage the difficult student. Most of the time we punish the individual. But truthfully, and this isn't a textbook, this is reality, truthfully, when something goes on and it's happened so fast and most of the people are involved, sometimes you have to punish the whole class or do no punishment at all. And I think punishing the whole class oftentimes is more appropriate than nothing at all, because nothing at all will lead to a bigger circumstance down the road.
Okay. So what are some common forms of punishment that you use when dealing with uncooperative students?
We like to use the word consequence rather than punishment.
Okay.
But what works well here is early on in the year, you find out what's important to children. For some kids, it's recess. They're in 6th grade. This will be the last year they ever have recess. So for some, it's recess. And so if you don't turn in your homework, you don't have recess. So it's just a consequence for an action that's understandable, clear, and defined. For other children, they'll have certain needs or interests. Maybe they want to help teachers, or maybe they want individual time. Well, you only get that individual time or that game, if you do what you're supposed to do. I don't like punishment for an individual behavior. I want it to be more, you do your homework, you get the good grade. You don't do your homework, you don't get recess, or you don't get whatever. The individual bad behaviors, from the minuscule, from chewing gum to, something further along the stratum of, reaching in someone's desk, those should have a punishment immediately applicable to the act, not a standard punishment. So if somebody goes in your desk and takes something from you, then using maybe like a Hammurabi type code, because we're learning about Hammurabi, then you give something up to them. And so that they understand a fairness or an equity in everything that they do.
Okay. How would you handle a talkative student that is disrupting the class? And how about a student that is angry at you or another student?
Okay, let's first take the talkative kid. You have a conversation with them, and you tell them that it's distracting to other students. If they understand that and make, or an attempt to make, an adjustment, that's fantastic. That's generally not the case. Generally, they've been allowed, again, I teach 6th grade, so they've been talking probably for 5 or 6 years here in school. Mm-hmm. So now you're breaking a habit that's very difficult to break. What I generally do is I ask them to pick a topic that they're most interested in. And at that point in time, they will teach the class a lesson. Then they will have to put up with the students who talk too much and see how frustrating it is. And if we don't have any other excessive talkers, I will become the excessive talker in the audience. And I will show them how difficult it is to read something aloud when someone's talking, how difficult it is to stay on task and to present something appropriately and get your message across. Generally, it's a fun lesson. The other kids in the class laugh about it. The children who are distracted when they're giving their presentation see the humor in it and hopefully see that it's difficult. I've also brought parents in. I have a funny story about that. Actually, I brought a parent in 3 years ago. She came in, she sat down. I told her that her son had this talking problem that we had to control because he was disrupting and distracting other students. She then went on to talk for 45 minutes without letting me say a word. On the 46th minute, she looked at me and said, "Oh my God, I'm the problem." At which point in time I nodded and said, "Yeah, apparently." And they had a conversation. The kid's still very talkative. He's in the 8th grade here now, but much better. With it comes maturity sometimes, but helping at home will get you a little bit. Now, the second question you asked was about a student who's angry at me or angry at another student. If they're angry at me, we have a conversation. Well, first of all, everything in teaching and everything in classroom management is getting things out of the way early. If you become reactionary, you're dead. What you have to do is set everything early. And so early on in the year, I talk about the fact that we're not the enemy. The teachers are not the enemy. We're actually, it's not an adversarial relationship. We're here to help you. And then I put the most god-awful difficult problem on the board. Maybe a kid can solve it. Most of the time, none can. So now, I could yell and scream at you, and in the old days, hit you with a ruler because you didn't get this. That's adversarial. That's me being your enemy. Or we can look at what do you know how to do and what don't you know how to do, and I can help you. Now, you choose that relationship. You choose if you want me to be the enemy or you want me to be the helper. I'm the same regardless. It's how you see me. So, again, the more you do up front, the less you have to be reactionary.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kittle.
You're welcome.
It was a pleasure interviewing you, and I'm sure we're all going to learn a lot in our educational psychology class from your insight.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.